In the bustling heart of Washington, D.C., on October 12, 2024, Major General Vanessa Carter, a trailblazing officer in the U.S. Army, was driving home after a long day at the Pentagon. At 47, Carter had risen through the ranks with a reputation for sharp intellect and unyielding dedication. As one of the highest-ranking black women in the military, her career was a testament to resilience in a field often dominated by tradition and hierarchy. That evening, she was behind the wheel of her modest sedan, her mind occupied with the upcoming briefing she was scheduled to deliver to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The city's streets were alive with the usual hum of traffic, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the pavement. Carter, dressed in civilian clothes, was just another driver navigating the capital's maze, until she wasn't. Officers Daniel Hayes and Michael Ruiz, both in their early 30s, were patrolling the streets of Northwest D.C. in their cruiser. Hayes, a 5-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police Department, was known for his by-the-book approach, while Ruiz, with 3 years on the force, often leaned on his partner's experience. Their shift had been uneventful, a mix of routine calls and paperwork, until they spotted Carter's vehicle. Her sedan had a taillight flickering, a minor infraction that caught Hayes' eye. He signaled for her to pull over on a quiet stretch of Connecticut Avenue, expecting a quick stop and a warning. What unfolded instead would unravel their careers and spark a firestorm of scrutiny. Carter pulled over promptly, her hands visible on the steering wheel as she waited for the officers to approach. She was calm, her military training instilling a discipline that kept her composed even in tense moments. Hayes approached the driver's side, his flashlight scanning the vehicle's interior, while Ruiz stood slightly behind, observing. "Good evening, ma'am," Hayes began, his tone professional but clipped. "Do you know why we pulled you over?" Carter explained the taillight issue, her voice steady, and offered to provide her license and registration. She reached for her purse, moving slowly to avoid any misunderstanding, but the situation escalated faster than she could have anticipated. Hayes, noticing her deliberate movements, misinterpreted her caution as hesitation. "Ma'am, keep your hands where I can see them," he said sharply, his hand resting on his holster. Carter complied, but her calm demeanor seemed to unsettle Ruiz, who stepped closer, his posture tense. "What's in the bag?" he demanded, his voice carrying an edge of suspicion. Carter, maintaining her composure, explained that she was reaching for her identification and that she was a serving military officer. She mentioned her rank, hoping to clarify her identity, but the officers exchanged a glance that suggested disbelief. To them, she was just another driver, and her claim of being a general seemed implausible. The exchange grew heated as Hayes pressed for her identification, his tone growing more aggressive. Carter, still composed, reiterated that she was complying but needed to retrieve her wallet. Ruiz, perhaps emboldened by his partner's demeanor, interjected, "We don't have time for stories, ma'am. Step out of the vehicle." Carter's heart sank, but she maintained her dignity, stepping out as instructed. She stood tall, her posture reflecting years of military discipline, but the officers' skepticism only deepened. They demanded to search her vehicle, citing her evasive behavior, though Carter insisted she had done nothing to warrant such a search. What followed was a series of missteps that would prove catastrophic for Hayes and Ruiz. Ignoring Carter's repeated statements about her identity, they proceeded with the search, finding nothing but her military ID, which confirmed her rank as Major General. Instead of de-escalating, Hayes, perhaps rattled by the realization, doubled down, accusing Carter of presenting a fake ID. The accusation stung, but Carter remained calm, requesting to speak with a supervisor. Ruiz, however, escalated the situation further by placing her in handcuffs, citing noncompliance as justification. The sight of a black woman in her 40s, dressed in civilian clothes, being restrained on a D.C. street drew the attention of passers-by, some of whom began recording the incident. Carter's arrest was brief but humiliating. She was taken to the local precinct, where her identity was quickly verified through Pentagon channels. Within an hour, a call from a senior Pentagon official reached the precinct's commander, demanding Carter's immediate release. The call was not a negotiation, it was an order, laced with the weight of military authority. By the time Carter was released, the incident had already begun to ripple through the corridors of power. The officer's actions, captured on body cameras and civilian smartphones, were uploaded to social media, sparking outrage. The hashtag General Arrested trended overnight, with commentators decrying the officer's conduct as emblematic of systemic bias in policing. Hayes and Ruiz were summoned to their precinct the following morning, unaware of the storm brewing around them. Their supervisor, Captain Laura Mitchell, was a seasoned officer who had navigated her share of controversies. But this was different. The Pentagon's involvement elevated the incident to a level she hadn't anticipated. She informed the officers that they were being placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. The gravity of the situation began to dawn on them as they learned of Carter's identity and the political firestorm their actions had ignited. The call from the Pentagon, relayed through the chain of command, was unequivocal. Their careers were on the line. Carter, meanwhile, retourne tout hors du théâtre Pentagon, but ce incident left a marque. She was no stranger to challenge a black woman in a mal-dominated institution, but being handcuffed on a public street was a new kind of indignity. She chose not to speak publicly about the incident, instead allowing her legal team and Pentagon representative to handle the fallout. Her silence, however, did not quell the growing public outcry. Civil rights organizations seized dans the incident, pointing to it as evidence of racial profiling and the need for systemic reform in law enforcement. Editorial in major newspapers called for accountability, while military officials quietly expressed their support for Carter, emphasizing her impeccable record. The investigation into and Ruiz moved swiftly. Internal Affairs reviewed body camera footage, which showed the officer's dismissive attitude toward Carter's claim of her rank. The footage also captured Ruiz's decision to handcuff her, despite no evidence of a threat. The officer defense that they were following protocol and had no way of verifying Carter's identity on the spot was undermined by their failure to de-escalate once her military ID was produced. The investigation concluded that their actions were not only unjustified but also reflected a lack of judgment that could not be tolerated in law enforcement. By November 2024, the Metropolitan Police Department announced the termination of both officers. The decision was accompanied by a public apology from the police chief, who acknowledged the unacceptable nature of the incident. The Pentagon, while maintaining its official silence, ensured that Carter received full support, including counseling and legal assistance. Behind closed doors, senior military officials expressed frustration with the incident, viewing it as an affront to the dignity of one of their own. The call that ended and Ruiz's career was not just a bureaucratic directive, it was a signal that the military would not tolerate disrespect toward its officers, especially one accomplished at Carter. The fallout extended beyond the officer termination. The incident became a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over policing and race in America. Community activists organized protests outside the process, demanding broad reform, while conservative commentators argued that the officers were unfairly scapegoated for following procedure. The truth, as always, lay in the gray area. And Ruiz were not villains in the traditional sense. They were officers caught in a moment of poor judgment, amplified by the weight of Carter's status and the public's demand for accountability. Their careers, built over years of service, were undone in a matter of weeks. Carter, for her part, continued her work at the Pentagon, her focus unwavering despite the media frenzy. Colleagues described her as stoic, a leader who refused to let the incident define her. Yet, in private moments, she confided too close that the experience had shaken her faith in the system meant to protect citizens. She wondered how many others, without the backing of the Pentagon, faced similar indignity without recourse. Her story, too unique in its specific, resonated with countless others who had experienced the sting of being judged by appearance rather than identity. The officer, now an employee, faced their own reckoning. Who had dreamed of rising through the ranks, found himself unemployable in law enforcement, his reputation tarnished by the viral footage. Ruiz, younger and less experienced, struggled with the sudden loss of his career, retreating from public view. Both men issued statements through their lawyers, expressing regret but maintaining that they had acted in good faith. Their apology did little to quell the public's anger, as the narrative had already taken hold. Tuco had overstepped, and the Pentagon had ensured they paid the price. As the weeks turned into months, The incident faded from the headline, but ETS impact linger. Carter's name became a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the barrier black women face in position of power. The Pentagon, while never publicly acknowledging the call that ended the office carré, quietly reinforced ETS protocol for protecting ETS personnel. The Metropolitan Police Department implemented new training module on de-escalation and bias recognition, took skeptic doubled their efficacy. The story of the arrest, the call, and the consequence became a case study in power dynamics, a moment where the weight of one institution crushed the ambition of two individuals. For Carter, the incident was a chapter she preferred to close. She continued to serve, her focus on the mission that had defined her career. Yet, the memory of that October evening linger, a reminder of how quickly assumption can spiral into chaos. For Anne Ruiz, it was a lesson learned too late, a mistake that cost them everything. And for the nation, it was another thread in the complex tapestry of justice, power, and accountability, woven from a single traffic stop gone wrong.